This was supposed to be just another night for a famous TV host, another chance to humiliate a conservative guest on live television. Millions were watching, the cameras were rolling, and she had spent weeks preparing a series of questions designed to corner and embarrass Donald Trump. But what happened next would not only shatter her career, but expose the media's true agenda in front of the entire nation. 3, 2, 1. The show went live. Trump sat confidently in his chair, his expression calm, while the host wore that familiar fake smile, the kind TV elites use when they think they're about to destroy someone's reputation. She believed she had the perfect trap set for him, but she had no idea she was about to walk straight into one herself. Mr. Trump, you've built an empire, led the country, influenced millions. Would you say you're just lucky? She delivered the question with that practiced, insincere smile, the kind that makes you wonder what's really behind it. But Trump had seen this game before. Start soft, then twist the knife. He leaned forward slightly, a mix of confidence and amusement in his voice. "You know, it's interesting you ask that," he said. "Liberals love that word, lucky. They use it to diminish success, to suggest that hard work and sacrifice don't matter. But let me tell you something about luck. Luck doesn't build skyscrapers, it doesn't create thousands of jobs, and it certainly doesn't make America great." The host's smile tightened. This wasn't the defensive response she had hoped for. But she wasn't about to back down. "So, you're saying everything you've achieved is purely through hard work?" "I'm saying," Trump replied, his voice gaining strength, "that success comes to those who earn it. Yes, I've been blessed, but I've also worked harder than most people can imagine. I've had sleepless nights, impossible deals, challenges that would have broken others. But here's what really matters. I've never done it alone." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. There it was, the opening she had been waiting for. Or so she thought. "Not alone?" she asked, her voice dripping with false curiosity. "Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the people behind Donald Trump." "Of course," Trump said, nodding. "When you mention the people behind me, you're probably thinking of my business partners, my advisors. But let me tell you who really deserves the credit, my family, particularly Melania." The host's expression shifted just slightly, like a predator sensing an opening. "Ah, yes, Melania. You know, many people wonder about her role in all of this. Some say she's rather quiet for such a powerful man's wife." Trump's eyes narrowed. The tension in the studio grew thick. "Quiet? Number dignified? Yes. There's a big difference, but I understand why some in the media might not grasp that concept." A nervous chuckle rippled through the audience. The host shifted in her chair, clearly not expecting this pushback. But she pressed on. "What I mean is, we rarely hear from her. Unlike other political wives, she isn't as visible. Don't you think the public deserves to know more about the woman behind Donald Trump?" "The public," Trump responded, his voice carrying a mix of pride and protective steel, "knows exactly what they need to know about Melania. She's brilliant, accomplished, and chooses her moments carefully, unlike some people who feel the need to fill every silence with noise." The audience murmured in approval. The host's smile faltered for just a second, but instead of backing off, she decided to push even harder. "Let's talk about those accomplishments," she said, her tone sharpening. "Because some people say, well, they wonder if her main achievement isn't simply being Mrs. Donald Trump." The air in the room turned ice cold. Even the cameramen exchanged glances. Trump's expression hardened. "Let me be very clear," he said, leaning in slightly. "Since you want to talk about achievements, let's talk facts. Melania speaks 5 languages fluently. She built her own successful career. She's represented our country with more grace and dignity than any first lady in recent memory. But, of course, you wouldn't know that, because the mainstream media is too busy pushing their own narrative." The host realized she was losing control. She tried a different approach. "Of course, Mr. Trump, but don't you think that being married to you has opened certain doors for her?" Trump chuckled, but there was no humor in it. You know what's interesting about that question? It shows exactly what's wrong with how some people think. Success isn't about doors being opened. It's about what you do once you're in the room. And Melania? She doesn't just walk through doors, she transforms every room she enters. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause. The host's face flushed slightly, but she wasn't done. She was about to make the biggest mistake of her career. "Well," she said, her voice growing bolder, "since you mentioned being by your side, let's talk about that. Your lifestyle, Mr. Trump, the constant spotlight, the pressure, the scrutiny. Don't you think it's challenging for someone who never sought this kind of attention?" Trump's eyes locked onto hers. "You know what's really challenging?" he countered, his voice carrying a controlled intensity. "Watching the media twist everything into their own narrative. Melania didn't just adapt to this life. She thrived in it, despite constant attacks from people who claim to champion women's empowerment." The host leaned in, thinking she had found vulnerability. "But the pressure must be enormous," she insisted. "The constant travel, the public appearances, the expectations. Some might say it's almost like a golden cage." Trump's eyebrows lifted. "A golden cage? That's an interesting choice of words. Tell me something. Why is it that strong, independent women are celebrated by the media? Unless they're conservative? Then suddenly they must be trapped?" The audience murmured in agreement. The host's confidence cracked, but she wasn't done. "Well, I'm simply suggesting," she tried to recover, "that perhaps this isn't the life she envisioned for herself, being constantly in your shadow." Trump's expression turned to amused disbelief. "My shadow?" he repeated. "I think you're confusing shadows with spotlights. Melania doesn't walk in anyone's shadow. She shines in her own right." "But you wouldn't understand that, would you? Because your kind of journalism isn't about truth. It's about creating shadows where there aren't any." The studio went silent. The producer was frantically signaling for a commercial break. But the host had already committed to her course. She was about to cross a line she could never recover from. Her next question would shock the entire room. "Mr. Trump," she said, her voice turning sharp, "let's be direct. You're a powerful, wealthy man. You could have any woman you want, yet you stay with someone who's aging alongside you. Don't you ever think about trading up?" The silence was deafening. Trump sat perfectly still. Then, in a voice quieter and more dangerous than before, he spoke. "Trading up?" he repeated. "Let me tell you something about value." What he said next would not only destroy the host's career, but become one of the most talked about moments in television history.